Hey, good morning, church family. This is the What I Wish I'd Said podcast for yesterday. The message that Pastor Seth preached from Romans chapter 13, verses 1 through 7. And I just want to say, first off, man, Seth, you crushed it. You did such a good job. That's a really hard passage. And then this morning, I woke up thinking about that message, and Wendy and I were doing our Lectio 365, and they sometimes honor what they call heroes of the faith. And so this morning was on a man named Oscar Romero, who was an archbishop in San Salvador during El Salvador Civil War. And I thought, wow, I'm going to share something that they wrote about him. And it just reminded me of how tricky and how much tension is in this passage, right? Because it sounds like on one hand, we have to do everything that our governmental officials tell us we have to do. But then on the other hand, we think about that passage where Peter said, we must obey God rather than man. And it's like, what do we do with that tension? And here's a man who lived in a time that was filled with that kind of tension. And I just want to read to you something that they wrote about him, that they said about him this morning in Lectio. It says this: Romero saw that love cannot be theoretical, neither is it soft or weak, but there is a violence to love, not a violence that hurts people, but a violence that resists all that hurts people. It stands up to the powers that exploit and destroy God's beloved children. It is a violent passion that shouts, no more. In the name of Christ, no more. It's this kind of love that Jesus demonstrated on the cross. What I want you to understand and remember from this passage that Seth preached about yesterday is this. It means that God places people in the positions of authority, but it doesn't mean that the people that are in that position of authority are godly people, right? We have a country that half the country wants to scream like, hey, whoever gets elected says that's God's man, that's God's woman. But being God's man or God's woman doesn't mean that you're a godly man or a godly woman. And as I was listening to Seth preach yesterday, and I was thinking about that passage where Peter did say, look, they told him, you can't preach the name of Jesus anymore. And he said, we must obey God rather than man. What I've learned in my years of ministry is that a lot of people, they quote that verse to justify their rebellion, right? They want to do what they want to do, and they say, I'm going to obey God instead of obeying you. But that's just rebellion, right? What Peter said was actually a statement of respect. He said, I respect your authority, and I'm going to obey God instead of your authority, but I respect that you are going to do what you have to do. That same Peter that told those men that found himself in a prison and was only allowed out because an angel was sent by the Lord to help him escape. The angel came to help him escape. Why? Because Peter had recognized the authority, respected the authority, and submitted to God's authority. Now, that doesn't always mean that we get a get out of jail free card, does it? Because James was also in prison and he was killed. What it does mean is that we have a responsibility to speak truth even when those in authority don't want to hear it, and when those in authority want to punish us for speaking the truth. We stand up for God's truth, and we use our voice, we use our influence, and we can do it in a way that's respectful instead of feeding our flesh and rebelling. And sometimes it just boils down to that. We just want to do what we want to do. And if that's our attitude, we've completely missed the point of God's authority. Man, again, when you see Seth, tell him what a great job he did. And I can't wait for this next Sunday sneak peek. It's Pastor Tori. She's going to teach her first message at the gathering. I'm super excited about it. I know you're going to get a lot from it. And then the week after that, we'll be back in Romans 13. But this week, like Seth said yesterday, honor somebody who's in authority over you. Find a way to respect their position and serve them, and see what God will do. Have a great week.